Couching is the technique of using a thread that is laid on the surface and then tying it down with another stitch. So here I've used it in one of the most common ways to use it, where you have a bit of an unusual shape that you want to have the lines of it put exactly where you want it. And you can see these are the tie-down stitches. Now you can use a straight stitch like that, or you can use something like here. I've got a chunky thread that I have couched it with herringbone stitch that matches it. I also love to use this on things like little rickracs here. You can really see the thread. I'm using that as part of the design element. Here I've got some crisscrossing threads. And let me show you something that is not couching. This is another way to hold down something like rickrack. But now, because I am going through the rickrack with a stitch, I'm just stitching it down. That is not couched. So I've kind of touched on reasons that you might want to use couching. If you have something like rickrack, you're not going to be able to embroider that and pull it through a piece of fabric. And, we need a whole YouTube channel just on rickrack. It's so great to work with. You may also have a thread that's something like this metallic that's a little bit fine and delicate and has edges that are going to catch on your fabric. So you might have a tough thread that's not going to pull through easily, but you might also have something like burlap or a really lightweight fabric that you're going to tear up. That's really not a fabric through which you would typically embroider. And obviously something like this, I don't know what this sparkly Halloween looking thing is, you're not going to be able to pull that through something that you're embroidering, because you're just going to rip everything off it and you're not going to get what you want. So let's look at the most basic way of couching, and this is what I started with, an example here where you're just taking one thread and stitching it down with another. So this is the thread that is laid. I came up from the back and then just went down to the back, straight stitch, easy, no problem. Now this can be the same thread, it can be a contrast thread. Of course, it's easier to see it if I do it in a contrast. So I just came up, first you can stab stitch it, came up from the back and went down again. If you do this in a contrast color, you can pretty quickly see that if your stitching is not really accurate, it's going to be pretty unforgiving. It's going to show every mistake. Of course, with stab stitching, it's easy to switch and do it left-handed. If you want to, you can also do this. I'm going to come up on the other side here. You can do this with a sewing motion if you want to. Of course, I could come over like this. I can come right next to it and do it, like a little whip stitch, do it flat to the fabric and come out there. So either one of those is going to work fine with either hand. Now, another consideration, this was an easy one because it's just a little straight line. So you don't have to fool with this bottom thread too much, because I just come up and go down again. But let's look at something like this where I'm trying to make a heart that I want to go exactly around this shape. And so notice that I've got this chunky, silky thread that's still threaded in this big needle, and this is hard to get through, pulling it through for embroidery. But what I've done is I've couched this as I've gone along, and I'm not going to sink this to the back, and not until I'm finished, because I can't really guess very easily what the end point's going to be. But see how nicely this leaves me the chance to get right into the little point of the heart, and then I can turn the corner and come right back up again where I want it, and just keep sewing until I come all the way around to the bottom. And only when I'm getting pretty close to the bottom of the heart, you know, maybe I would get down to here and I'd think, okay, now I can see how much I need, and I could sink it down and finish stitching it. And you can knot it off before you finish doing all the tying down if you want to. I'll just tell you, it's easy. If you're not careful, it's easy to get a bunch of tangles on the back. So I don't recommend just, you know, leaving this hanging down like this and hoping that you're not going to catch it, because I can pretty much guarantee you're going to catch it at some point and turn it over and have something really loose and unfortunate. So I hope that you have some fun coming up with different ways to do couching. It's just a great way to make little scenes and make all kinds of motifs. If you have done what I've done and collected all kinds of fun trims over the year, and if you have every color of rickrack on the planet, this is a good place to use your rickrack.